Excuse me, I'd like to see that burgundy handbag, please. It's for my mother's birthday.
That piece is $3,200. This is a luxury establishment. We cater to a very specific clientele.
There's no confusion. I have the money. I'm a paying customer. I'd like to see the bag.
Ma'am, we've had issues with people coming in here, trying on merchandise they can't afford and wasting our time.
Suitable for who, exactly? For Black people? Is that what you mean?
I didn't say that. You're putting words in my mouth and causing a disturbance. You need to leave.
Luxury manager strikes pregnant Black woman. The Mafia boss responds. Nobody in that luxury boutique knew what was about to happen. Not the customers browsing silk scarves. Not the security guard by the door. And especially not Richard Morrison, the store manager who had just raised his hand to strike a Black woman's face. But in 60 seconds, his perfect life would shatter into a million pieces. Let me take you back to where it all began. It was a Thursday afternoon in Manhattan's Diamond District, where money whispered instead of shouted. The kind of place where a handbag costs more than most people's cars, and the air itself smelled like privilege and leather. Amara Williams walked through the polished glass doors of Elite Maison, one hand resting gently on her 6-month baby bump, the other clutching a simple canvas tote bag. She wore a comfortable cotton dress, cream-colored, modest, clean. Her natural hair was pulled back in a neat bun. No designer labels. No diamonds. No armor. Just a pregnant woman on a mission. She'd saved for 8 months to buy her mother a birthday gift from this store. Her mama, who'd worked 3 jobs to put Amara through college. Her mama, who deserved something beautiful for once in her hard-lived life. Amara approached the nearest display, a case of Italian leather handbags that gleamed under soft lighting. Her eyes settled on a burgundy piece with gold hardware. Perfect. Classic. Her mother would treasure it forever. "Excuse me," she said softly to a passing sales associate. "Could I see this one, please?" The woman, blonde, early 30s, name tag reading Jessica, glanced at Amara. Her eyes did that thing. That quick up-down scan that calculated worth in milliseconds. Cotton dress. Canvas bag. No wedding ring visible. Pregnant and alone. The math didn't add up to commission. "That piece is $3,200, Jessica said, her smile thin as paper. "Perhaps you'd be more comfortable in our outlet store? It's about 40 blocks south." Amara's hand instinctively moved to her belly. The baby kicked, as if sensing her mother's rising tension. "I'd still like to see it, please." Jessica's smile vanished entirely. "Miss, I don't think you understand. Is there a problem here?" The voice cut through the air like a knife through silk. Richard Morrison strode over, 6 feet of pressed suit and pomaded hair. He was 40-something, with the kind of face that had probably been handsome once, before arrogance carved permanent lines around his mouth. He was the store manager. And in his kingdom of marble floors and crystal chandeliers, his word was law. "No problem, Mr. Morrison," Jessica said quickly. "I was just explaining our pricing to this customer." Richard's eyes landed on Amara. And there it was again, that look. That calculation. That instant judgment that reduced her to a stereotype, a statistic, a problem to be managed. "Ma'am," he said, his voice dripping with false politeness, "this is a luxury establishment. We cater to a very specific clientele. Perhaps there's been some confusion." Amara took a slow breath. She'd been here before, not in this store, but in this moment. The moment when someone decided who you were before you opened your mouth. The moment when your skin color became your credit score. "There's no confusion," she said, her voice steady. "I'd like to purchase a handbag for my mother's birthday. I have the money. I'm a paying customer." Something flickered across Richard's face. Annoyance. "Jessica, return to your other customers," he said, never taking his eyes off Amara. "I'll handle this. Handle this." Like she was a spill to be mopped up. A disturbance to be removed. But here's what Richard Morrison didn't know. Couldn't have known. Had no way of knowing. The woman standing before him in that simple cotton dress? She wasn't just Amara Williams. social worker and expectant mother. She was Amara DeLuca. And her husband didn't just run a business. He ran half of New York's underground empire. "Ma'am, I'm going to be direct with you," Richard said, lowering his voice. "We've had issues with people coming in here, trying on merchandise they can't afford, wasting our associates' time. Now, I'm not saying that's what you're doing. Then what are you saying?" The question hung in the air between them. Other customers were starting to notice. An elderly white woman in pearls paused her browsing. A young couple by the shoe display glanced over. Richard's jaw tightened. "I'm saying that perhaps this isn't the right environment for you. There are plenty of stores that might be more suitable." "Suitable for who?" Amara asked quietly. "For black people. Is that what you mean?" "I didn't say that. You didn't have to." The store fell silent. Even the soft classical music playing through hidden speakers seemed to lower in volume, as if the building itself was holding its breath. Richard's face flushed. He wasn't used to being challenged. In his world, people like him, white, wealthy, in positions of power, didn't have to explain themselves. Especially not to women who looked like Amara. "You need to leave," he said, his voice hardening. "No. I haven't done anything wrong. You're causing a disturbance. I asked to see a handbag. That's not a disturbance. That's shopping." Something in Richard snapped. Maybe it was the audience watching. Maybe it was the way Amara refused to shrink, refused to apologize for existing in his space. Maybe it was something darker, something that had been festering in him for years. He stepped closer, invading her space. Close enough that she could smell his expensive cologne, could see the burst blood vessels in his eyes from too many after-work cocktails. "Listen to me very carefully," he hissed. "I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but it ends now. You can't afford anything in this store. We both know it. Everyone here knows it. So stop embarrassing yourself and get out before I call security." Amara didn't move, didn't flinch. Her hand rested protectively on her belly, and when she spoke, her voice carried through the entire store. "I have $4,000 in my purse. Cash. I've been saving for 8 months. I came here to buy a gift for my mother, who raised me to believe that respect isn't determined by how much money you have. Clearly, she was wrong about some places." The elderly woman in pearls gasped softly. The young couple exchanged uncomfortable glances. Richard's face went from red to purple. "You're lying," he spat. "Show me. Show me this money right now, or I'm calling the police." "You want me to flash cash in the middle of your store? So you can accuse me of something else? Now you're being ridiculous." "Am I? Or are you looking for any excuse to have a black woman arrested?" That did it. That was the line Richard couldn't let stand. In front of his customers. In front of his staff. In his store. He grabbed Amara's arm. She pulled back immediately. "Don't touch me. You need to leave now. Take your hand off me." "Security!" Richard shouted, his grip tightening on her arm. "Security!" The guard, a young black man named Marcus who'd been watching the entire scene with growing horror, rushed over. But he didn't grab Amara. He stood there, frozen, watching his boss manhandle a pregnant woman. "Marcus, escort this woman out immediately," Richard demanded. "Sir, I don't think. That's not a request. Do your job or you'll be joining her on the street." And that's when it happened. That's when Richard Morrison made the biggest mistake of his life. As Amara tried to pull away from his grip, her purse fell. Content spilled across the marble floor, wallet, phone, keys, and yes, a thick envelope of cash. Bills scattered like autumn leaves. Richard stared at the money. Then he looked at Amara. And instead of apologizing, instead of backing down, instead of recognizing his error, he laughed. "So you do have money," he said, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "Probably stole it. Or earned it on your back. Either way, it's not welcome here." The store went silent. Someone's phone was recording now. Amara could see the red light out of the corner of her eye. "You should choose your next words very carefully," Amara said, her voice low and controlled. But there was something underneath it now. Something cold. Something dangerous. Richard didn't hear the warning. He was too far gone, too drunk on his own power. Or what? You'll complain to corporate? Do you know how many complaints I get from people like you? They all get filed in the same place, the trash. He kicked at the scattered bills, sending them skittering across the floor. Pick up your drug money and get out of my store before I have you arrested for prostitution. I'm sure you have a record, they always do. The elderly woman in pearls dropped her handbag. It hit the floor with a crack. Marcus the security guard closed his eyes, as if he couldn't bear to watch what was coming next. Because what Richard Morrison didn't know, what he was about to learn in the most brutal way possible, was that Amara wasn't alone. She was never alone. The baby kicked again in her belly. And as if in response, the glass doors of Elite Maison opened. 3 men walked in. They wore dark suits that cost more than Richard's monthly salary. Their shoes clicked against the marble floor in perfect sync. They moved with the kind of confidence that didn't need to announce itself. The leader was tall, broad-shouldered, with olive skin and dark hair slicked back from a face that could have been carved from marble. His eyes, cold, calculating, absolutely merciless, scanned the store until they landed on the scene before him. His pregnant wife on her knees, picking up money from the floor. A white man standing over her, red-faced and sneering. Time seemed to slow down. Amara. The man's voice was soft. Deadly soft. Amore mio. What's happening here? Amara looked up from the floor, and her entire face transformed. The careful composure cracked, just for a second, and relief flooded through. Marco, she said quietly. I'm okay. But Marco De Luca could see that she wasn't okay. He could see the tears she was holding back. He could see the way her hands trembled as she gathered the scattered bills. He could see the red marks on her arm where someone had grabbed her. And in that moment, Richard Morrison should have run. Should have apologized. Should have done literally anything except what he did next. Excuse me, Richard said, his voice sharp with irritation. This is a private matter between myself and this woman. Unless you're with her, I'll have to ask you to. With her? Marco's voice was so quiet that everyone strained to hear it. Yes. I'm with her. She's my wife. He walked forward slowly, each step measured. His 2 associates flanked him, moving to block the exit. Nobody was leaving this store. Not yet. Richard's eyes widened slightly as he took in the 3 men, their expensive suits, their cold eyes, the way they moved like predators in synchronized motion. Something in his lizard brain started screaming warnings. But his ego was louder. Your wife was causing a disturbance in my store, Richard said, drawing himself up to his full height. She refused to leave when asked. She made accusations of racism. And frankly, she doesn't belong here. Doesn't belong here, Marco repeated slowly, as if tasting the words. In your store. That's correct. Because of how she looks. Because she clearly can't afford our merchandise and was wasting our time. I see. Marco knelt down beside Amara, gently helping her to her feet. His hands were tender as he brushed off her dress, his eyes scanning for any injuries. When he saw the marks on her arm, his jaw clenched so tight that a muscle jumped in his cheek. Did you touch my wife? He asked Richard, still not looking at him. She was being hysterical. Did you touch my wife? The temperature in the store seemed to drop 10 degrees. Richard swallowed hard. She needed to be escorted out. She was disrupting my business. Your business. Marco finally looked up, and Richard took an involuntary step backward. Your business. Tell me, Mr. Morrison. Richard Morrison. I'm the manager here, and I don't appreciate your tone. Mr. Morrison, Marco interrupted, his voice still terrifyingly calm. Do you know who I am? For the first time, real fear flickered across Richard's face. My name is Marco De Luca. He let that hang in the air for a moment. Does that name mean anything to you? Richard's face went pale. Even if he didn't follow organized crime, even if he'd lived his entire life in willful ignorance of what ran beneath New York's polished surface, he'd heard that name. Everyone had heard that name. That's not, Richard's voice cracked. You can't be. But I am. Marco stood, positioning himself between Amara and Richard. Protective. Possessive. Dangerous. And you just assaulted my pregnant wife in front of witnesses. You called her a thief. A prostitute. You made her kneel on the floor of your store to pick up money while you stood over her like a master with a slave. I didn't know. Didn't know what? That she was married to me? So if she'd been married to nobody, it would have been fine? If she'd been just another black woman with no protection, no power, no one to speak for her, that would have made it acceptable. Richard opened his mouth, but no sound came out. One of Marco's associates, a man with a scar running down his left cheek, pulled out his phone. Boss, I've got 3 angles on video. Customers recorded everything. It's already uploading to our secure server. Good, Marco said, never taking his eyes off Richard. Evidence is important. Legal cases require evidence. Legal cases. Richard's voice came out as a squeak. Listen, there's been a misunderstanding. I apologize if I came across as... You didn't come across as anything. You were racist. You were violent. You were cruel to a woman who'd done nothing except try to shop in your store. Marco took a step closer. And now you're going to face the consequences. Please, Richard said, his carefully maintained composure crumbling completely. Please, I have a family, I have a career, You should have thought of that before you touched her. Marco pulled out his own phone and dialed a number. Someone answered on the first ring. Salvatore, it's me. I need you to do something for me. Yes, right now. Find out who owns Elite Maison, the luxury boutique on 5th Avenue. I don't care if they're not for sale. Make them an offer they can't refuse. No, not later. I want the papers drawn up within the hour. Richard's knees actually buckled. He caught himself on the edge of a display case. You can't, he whispered. You can't just buy. Can't I? Marco's smile was colder than a January wind. Mr. Morrison, I have resources you can't even imagine. And I'm about to use every single one of them to make sure you never work in retail again. Not in New York. Not anywhere. You can't blacklist me from an entire industry. Watch me. The glass doors opened again. This time, it was a short man in a very expensive suit, carrying a leather briefcase. He looked like a lawyer because he was a lawyer, the best money could buy. Mr. DeLuca, the lawyer said, nodding respectfully to Marco before offering a hand to Amara. Mrs. DeLuca, I'm so sorry to hear what happened. Are you hurt? Do you need medical attention? I'm okay, Thomas, Amara said softly. But my arm. Thomas's eyes hardened as he saw the marks. He pulled out his phone and took photos from multiple angles. That's assault and battery, he said clinically. Against a pregnant woman, no less. That's aggravated circumstances. We're looking at criminal charges plus a civil suit. Pain and suffering, emotional distress, potential harm to the unborn child, public humiliation. Wait. Richard's voice was desperate now. Wait, please, we can work this out. I'll apologize. I'll personally sell her any bag she wants, at a discount. At a discount? Amara's voice cut through his babbling. She'd been quiet since Marco arrived, but now she stepped forward, and there was steel in her spine. You think a discount fixes this? You think money fixes what you did? I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. No, you're not. You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry I have a husband who can destroy you. But if I'd been alone, if I'd been just another black woman with no protection, you'd be laughing about this with your friends over drinks tonight. You wouldn't believe the woman I had to throw out today. Richard said nothing, because they both knew she was right. Amara turned to Marco. I want him fired. Done. I want him blacklisted from every luxury retailer in the city. Consider it done. And I want a public apology. Not to me. To every person he's ever treated like this. Because we both know I'm not the first. Marcus the security guard spoke up from where he'd been standing, watching everything unfold. She's not, he said quietly. He's done this before. Lots of times. People of color, mostly. Anyone who doesn't look right to him. Usually they don't have anyone to back them up. Richard spun on Marcus. You're fired. You're absolutely fired. You can't fire anyone, Marco said, his voice cutting through Richard's hysteria like a blade. Because as of approximately 3 minutes ago, you don't work here anymore. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it and smiled, that cold, terrible smile. The purchase is complete. Elite Maison is now owned by DeLuca Holdings. Which means you're trespassing, Mr. Morrison. I'm going to have to ask you to leave. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. What happened next would be talked about in the Diamond District for years. Marco made a single phone call, and within 20 minutes, the store was filled with people. Real estate lawyers. HR representatives from DeLuca Holdings. 2 uniformed police officers who took statements with very careful, respectful tones. And media. Somehow, though everyone knew how, the story had leaked. A local news van pulled up outside. Then another. Then a national one. By the time Richard Morrison was escorted out of Elite Maison by police, there were cameras waiting. Mr. Morrison, is it true you assaulted a pregnant woman? Mr. Morrison, do you have a statement about the racial profiling allegations? Mr. Morrison, how do you respond to accusations that you've discriminated against customers for years? Richard tried to cover his face, but the damage was done. His image, red-faced, being led away, looking guilty as sin, would be on the evening news. On social media. Everywhere. Inside the store, Amara sat in the manager's office, former manager's office, with a bottle of water and her feet up. Marco had insisted, practically carried her there himself. Mrs. DeLuca. Thomas the lawyer knocked gently on the open door. I filed a formal complaint with the police. They'll be pressing charges, assault, battery, and we're pushing for a hate crime enhancement given the clearly racial motivation. Will it stick? Amara asked. With the video evidence? Absolutely. And the civil suit will be even easier. We have multiple witnesses, including his own security guard, who's agreed to testify about Morrison's pattern of discrimination. What about Marcus? The guard. He's getting a promotion, Marco said, walking in with a garment bag. Head of security, effective immediately, with a salary that actually reflects the job. He laid the garment bag across the desk and unzipped it to reveal a beautiful burgundy handbag, the one Amara had wanted to see. For your mother, he said softly. Happy birthday to her. Amara's eyes filled with tears. Marco, I didn't need you to buy the whole store. I didn't buy it for you. I bought it because places like that shouldn't exist. Luxury shouldn't mean cruelty. Class shouldn't mean the right to treat people like they're beneath you. He knelt beside her chair, taking her hands. And anyone who hurts you, they don't get to just apologize and walk away. He's ruined, isn't he? Completely. His name is toxic now. No luxury brand will touch him. He'll be lucky to get a job at a gas station, and honestly, even that's too good for him. There was a knock on the door frame. Jessica, the sales associate who'd first dismissed Amara, stood there, pale and trembling. Mrs. DeLuca, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I wanted to apologize. For earlier. For judging you. For not helping when I should have. I'm so sorry. Amara studied her for a long moment. Did you know about Morrison's pattern of discrimination? Jessica's throat worked. Yes. And you said nothing. I was scared. Scared of losing my job. Scared of being blacklisted. I know that's not an excuse. You're right. It's not. Amara stood slowly, one hand on her belly. But I also know what it's like to need a job. To feel powerless. So I'm going to give you a choice. Jessica waited, barely breathing. You can leave now, with a reference letter that says you resigned for personal reasons. Or you can stay, and help us make this store what it should have been from the beginning, a place where everyone is treated with respect, regardless of how they look or how much money they have. But if you stay and I ever hear that you've treated a customer the way you treated me, You're done. No second chances. No explanations. Done. Do you understand? Yes, Jessica whispered. Yes, I understand. Thank you. Thank you so much. After she left, Amara sank back into the chair. She was exhausted, emotionally wrung out. Marco crouched beside her again. You didn't have to give her another chance. I know. But if I'd fired everyone who ever made a mistake, who ever went along with something wrong because they were scared, who'd be left? She touched his face gently. Besides, you taught me that everyone deserves a chance to be better. You were better, remember? When you chose me. He caught her hand and pressed a kiss to her palm. Best choice I ever made. Even though I bring home gangster drama? Amore, you are the one person in my life who has nothing to do with that world. You're my safe place. My conscience. My proof that good still exists. His hand covered her belly. And anyone who threatens that, they learn what happens when they touch what's mine. Outside, they could hear the sounds of the store being closed. For renovations. Marco had already ordered a complete overhaul, new policies, new training, new management. The grand reopening would be in a month, with a new mission statement about inclusivity and respect. What about Morrison? Amara asked. What happens to him now? He's facing criminal charges. He'll likely lose his house trying to pay for defense lawyers. His wife is already filing for divorce. Apparently this isn't the first time his behavior has caused problems. And the video has gone viral. He's infamous. Good, Amara said simply. Good. He hurt people for years. He got away with it because his victims didn't have power. Didn't have protection. Didn't have anyone to believe them. So yes, good. Let him feel what it's like to be powerless. To be judged. To be dismissed and discarded. Marco looked at his wife, this woman who worked with at-risk youth in the Bronx, who volunteered at homeless shelters, who'd stolen his heavily guarded heart with her kindness, and felt something fierce and protective surge through him. I love you, he said simply. I love you too. Even when you go all mafia boss on people. Especially when I go all mafia boss on people. She laughed, and the sound was like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. 3 months later, Elite Maison reopened to a very different atmosphere. The new manager was a black woman named Keisha who'd worked her way up from sales associate to regional director at another luxury brand. The staff was diverse, trained extensively in unconscious bias and customer service. The mission statement, printed on elegant cards by the register, read, Luxury for everyone. Respect for all. Richard Morrison pleaded guilty to assault charges in exchange for probation and community service. He was ordered to work 200 hours at a homeless shelter, the same one where Amara volunteered. She saw him there sometimes, mopping floors, serving food, his head down in shame. She never spoke to him. Some lessons, she believed, had to be learned in silence. The video of the incident had gone viral, racking up 30 million views. It sparked a nationwide conversation about discrimination in luxury retail, about how money and power protect some people while leaving others vulnerable. Amara gave one interview to a black woman journalist, where she said simply, I was lucky. Lucky to have protection. Lucky to have power behind me. But what about all the women who don't? They deserve respect too. They deserve dignity too. And until every store, every business, every space treats people with basic human decency regardless of race or class or appearance, we haven't finished the work. The burgundy handbag sat on her mother's dresser, a symbol of something more than luxury. It was proof that dignity isn't something you purchase. It's something you demand. And when the world tries to take it from you, when someone looks at you and decides you're less than, decides you don't belong, decides you don't deserve respect, you stand your ground. You fight back. And if you're very, very lucky, you have someone in your corner who'll burn down the world to protect you. Marco and Amara welcomed their daughter 2 months later. They named her Rosa, after Marco's grandmother, a woman who'd survived poverty, war, and discrimination to build a better life for her family. A woman who'd taught Marco that true power isn't about money or fear. It's about protecting those who can't protect themselves. It's about using your privilege to lift others up instead of pushing them down. It's about remembering that everyone deserves to be treated like they matter. because they do. And as Rosa grew up, her parents would tell her this story. Not to teach her about revenge or power, but to teach her something more important. That dignity is not negotiable. That respect is not earned, it's owed. That the clothes you wear, the money in your wallet, the color of your skin, none of it determines your worth. You determine your worth. And anyone who doesn't see that, they're not worth your time. Sometimes the most powerful response to hatred isn't more hatred. It's standing your ground and refusing to let anyone convince you that you're less than you are. Richard Morrison learned that the hard way. May his lesson serve as a reminder to everyone who thinks power gives them permission to be cruel. There's always someone more powerful. And sometimes, that someone has been holding the hand of the person you dismissed.